Hello, and welcome back to another episode of The Pilot Principle. If you are new here, this is the podcast where we watch the first episode, the pilot, and use it to see whether it is worth our time to watch the entire series, or at least the second episode. Because, say it with me people, there is just so little time and so much to bloody watch. On this episode of The Pilot Principle, we will be analysing the Netflix crime drama Griselda. So typically when we look at a pilot episode, we analyse the story, the characters, the pace, and we love a bit of wild speculation here on what the serial arc could look like. I then talk about what I did and didn't like in the pilot episode and if I shall be continuing with the series and why you may agree or disagree. So with that out of the way, let us start with the pilot synopsis as provided by Netflix UK. Griselda flees Medellin for Miami to make a fresh start. With her sons and a hidden cachet in tow, she seizes a chance to establish her own business. And that, people, is what I call the perfect synopsis. I understand who the main character is, Griselda, where they're from, Medellin, where they're going to, Miami, what she wants, a fresh start, as well as being intrigued by what that hidden cachet could be. Cachet? I always say cachet. Anyway, I'm pleased with that. I'm intrigued. I want to know more. So let's just get into things and talk through the credits. Maybe it's because I work in television and I write about film and I write about television and I do a podcast about television, but I always like knowing a bit about the behind the scenes of what show or film I am investing my time in. So when it comes to Griselda, we have a pilot title, whoop whoop, and the pilot title is Lady Comes to Town. And from what we gain from the pilot synopsis, we can understand that Lady is probably Griselda and Comes to Town is likely Miami. Episode length is 51 minutes and I am more than happy with that. And we have a series length of 6 episodes. Okay, moving on to writers, and this is we have a crew. We have a writing crew on this episode. So our 3 writers are Ingrid Escajeda, Doug Miro, and Eric Newman. So starting with Ingrid Escajeda. So she has written episodes of Justified, Sneaky Pete, and Silo. And interestingly enough, her first writing credit was on the Disney Channel series Hannah Montana. It just goes to show, you know, if you spread your wings, one day you will be able to fly. Next on the list, we have Doug Miro, and Doug Miro has written for film and television. So for film, he has written The Great Raid, Prince of Persia, Sands of Time, The Sorcerer's Apprentice, and The Great Wall, to name a few. And for TV, he has written for Narcos and Narcos Mexico, both of which he also was one of the creators for. And according to his IMDb page, he's also writing the true story of the only known samurai of African origin, Yasuke, who lived in the 16th century. Now, I believe there was a Netflix anime one series thing last year, the year before. I want to say the year before. So I don't know whether this new Yasuke will be a feature film or a series or what have you. But yes, Doug Miro is penning that. And finally, for our trio of writers, we have Eric Newman. And for TV, he has written and also created the series True Story. And he also wrote on episodes of Narcos and Narcos Mexico, of which he was also the showrunner. Eric Newman has a healthier filmography on the producer side, and he's actually produced films such as Dawn of the Dead, Children of Men, In Time, RoboCop, the newer one, Bright, and Rebel Moon, which was a terrible, terrible movie. That's the Zack Snyder film that came out at the tail end of 2023, and there's a part 2 coming, but I don't know why. And yet, I might end up watching it because I don't like leaving things unfinished. Ingrid Escajeda, Doug Miro, and Eric Newman are all executive producers / showrunners and probably wrote the whole series. Moving on to the director for Lady Comes to Town, Andres Baez. So Baez has directed episodes of El Cartel 2, La Guerra Total, which he has done 111 episodes of. He's also done episodes of Metastasis, Narcos, Narcos Mexico, and also 2 episodes of The Sandman. The Sandman has not come up in a few episodes, but I'm happy to see that The Sandman is still rearing its beautiful head every now and then on the pilot principle. Moving on to cast, and we have Sofia Vergara as Griselda Blanco, who is our central protagonist for the series and titular character. Vergara is likely known to most for starring as Gloria Delgado Pritchett in the series Modern Family, for which she starred in 250 episodes. Bloody hell, like that's a lot of episodes. I don't think I ever finished it. I think I got to maybe series 7 or 8 and then put it down. But now that it's over, I think one day if I'm bored and I have, because it's just a 20-minute show and it's actually a really easy watch and quite funny from what I recall, I think I'd go back and watch it. Also on Vergara's filmography, for TV, she has been in episodes of My Wife and Kids, Eve, Hot Properties, Entourage, Fuego en la Sangre, and for film, she has starred in The Smurfs, Happy Feet, New Year's Eve, Machete Kills, and Hot Pursuit. And Sofia Vergara is also one of the executive producers on Griselda. So well done, Sofia Vergara. Get your bag, because as well as starring in something, if you can also get yourself credited as an executive producer or a producer, then that gives you some sort of control in the creative process as well as just earning you a bit more money on the side, isn't it? Like, good for you. Get your bag, girl. The only other name that I have to mention specifically for the pilot episode is Jose Zuniga, who plays Rafa Rodriguez, aka Amilcar. Now, if Zuniga looks familiar to you, it's likely because he has starred in one of your favourite or brief dalliances of programmes or film that you have seen since 1991, because he has been credited in 139 film or television programmes. And here are a couple of examples: Touched by an Angel, Law & Order SVU, ER, Bones, Mission Impossible 3, 24, Dexter, Prison Break, The OC, Grey's Anatomy, Twilight, Nip Tuck, Ghost Whisperer, Suits, Person of Interest, House, Scandal, How to Get Away with Murder, Desperate Housewives, Criminal Minds, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., New Amsterdam, The Blacklist, Narcos Mexico, Chicago PD, Westworld. I mean, he stays in work and we love that for him. So this episode is mostly going to be the Sofia Vergara show, and I'm here for it. But these are some of the names also listed under cast at the end of the pilot episode. We have Alberto Guerra, Christian Tapan, Martin Rodriguez, Juliana Aiden Martinez, and Vanessa Felito. I haven't added who these actors play because a lot of them don't really turn up in the pilot episode. Now, for those of you who don't know, the series Griselda is based on the real life story of the Colombian cartel leader, Griselda Blanco. And I've actually never heard of Griselda Blanco, which feels like a shame for some reason. I feel like I should know my drug lords. And though it is based on a real life story, I didn't want to do any research because spoilers, okay? So we are entering this pilot analysis completely blind. Well, not blind, but we are just using the information that has been provided for us within the pilot episode only. And in terms of what made me want to watch Griselda in the first place, well, if you haven't gathered, it's from the creative minds of Narcos and Narcos Mexico, which I haven't watched, but I want to watch. It's actually on one of the list of programs that I'm trying to get to this year because there are so many popular shows that I still haven't seen but have been meaning to see, and I kind of now want to make that time to see. So Narcos is actually on that list. So I thought maybe watching Griselda would put me in the right sort of frame of mind or mood to continue along the theme and maybe go and watch Narcos afterwards. We'll see. Another reason I really wanted to watch it though is because it's something new for Sofia Vergara, who I only really know as being in Modern Family and starring as Gloria. And she was funny in it. I remember really enjoying her character, but I don't know, can she act? Beyond that, I mean, obviously she acted in that and she was really good, but you want to see an actor be diverse in their roles and push themselves. So for me, a little bit of the reason that I wanted to watch Griselda was curiosity. Another reason I wanted to watch Griselda is because something I realized quite recently about myself is that I really enjoy a female-led program. Some of my favorite shows are led by women, and there are a lot of these popular shows, listed on the greatest TV series of all time that I haven't seen or haven't been able to get past the first episode. And I partly think that's because they're all led by men. Like, I don't really know why. It was never an active choice, It just so happens to be the case. So it's a female-led show. I was automatically intrigued by that. And the last reason that I really wanted to watch Griselda is because it's also partially a Spanish language program. And if you could tell from the way I was rolling my R's when I was saying them Rodriguez's, I can speak un poquito español. Así que it's a chance for me to practice and listen to the Spanish language being spoken natively. And I'm always for that. Now that all of the backstage stuff has been gotten out of the way, it is time to dive into the first 10 minutes of Griselda. And I always focus on the first 10 minutes of the pilot because that should get you to the point of the inciting incident, so the thing that changes the main characters' lives, as well as the end of Act 1. So you feel like you've almost had a sense of completion to the first part of the story. Now, I heard someone on social media recently say that they had started and stopped 5 different shows one weekend after the first 10 minutes, which really just goes to show how important those first 10 minutes are, especially in this day and age of just having so much to consume and various medias to go and consume it on. So if those first 10 minutes aren't engaging for your audience, you risk losing them. So with that being said, let's dip and dive into the first 10 minutes of Griselda, Lady Comes to Town. We open with a quote, which we are drip fed. And the quote is, "The only man I was ever afraid of was a woman." And at that point, I was already like, oh! And then it continues and says, "Named Griselda Blanco." And this is a quote by Pablo Escobar. We come off of that quote and we are in Medellin, Colombia in 1978. And a woman, Griselda, stumbles into her house, her hands covered in blood, her own blood. She patches up the gash with a sanitary towel and plasters, which I thought was very inventive. This is all shot in close-ups and from behind, and we haven't really gotten a chance to see her face until now, where she's looking at her reflection. And her name, which is also the title, Griselda, appears on screen in front of her face. Griselda has a long night ahead of her, which starts with a call to an old friend in Miami, Carmen. She tells Carmen that she had problems with Alberto and she'll be there in the morning with the kids. The kids are her 3 sons who are soon roused and packed. Griselda doesn't tell them until they're in the car that she and Alberto are getting a divorce and they are moving to Miami. When they get to Miami, Carmen welcomes them to her home and the room where the 4 of them will be sharing until Griselda can get on her feet. The kids tucked up in bed, Carmen and Griselda go for drinks, and we learn that Carmen now owns a travel company, having divorced her husband and left the life behind. That life, you're wondering? The drug business. And Griselda assures her friend that after what Alberto has put her through, she is done with him. She's done with the life and she is looking forward to a fresh start. Carmen goes on about how she is happy that the life is behind her, and Griselda promises not to bring any of that stuff onto Carmen's doorstep. However, back at the house, while her boys are asleep around her, Griselda unpacks her youngest son's suitcase and reveals a kilo of cocaine that she smuggled from Colombia. And that right there is the 10-minute mark. And can I just say, straight off the bat, that quote is fantastic. The way it was told in fractions, you know, the only man I was ever afraid of, we're like, who was a woman? What? Named Griselda Blanco. Huh? Who said this? Pablo Escobar. Stop it. We have already, just by those few words, built a level of anticipation for who this mysterious woman is, and we already cannot wait to meet her. Also from the opening, and I'm talking those first sort of 2, 3, 4 minutes, we are wondering what has happened. What is she running from? How does she get that massive gash in her side that she has to cover up and pretend isn't there? Will she make it to Florida in time? Because she's looking over her shoulder the entire time that she packs and leaves. Anyone leaving in the middle of the night is running, and we are worried for her. We are worried for the safety of her kids. And we are curious about what that life that she is leaving behind is. You know, what happened between her and Alberto. She tells the kids that her and Alberto are getting a divorce. She tells her friend Carmen that she doesn't know what Alberto has put her through. And I'm like, what has Alberto done to you? What has he done? I'm on your side. Tell me. And I love at the end that she tells her friend that, oh no, I've leave that life behind. No, I'm not going to bring that to your doorstep. Lies. Of course she's not going to bring it to her friend's doorstep because it's already in her friend's house. What? And as we're seeing Griselda with that kilo of coke, we're like, what does she plan to do with it? It is a solid opening. I know who my main character is. I understand some of her core traits. We've gone from one world into another, going from Medellin, Colombia to Miami, Florida, and we start to get an idea of what she's fighting for. In terms of our main character, singular, Griselda Blanco, our titular character, the first thing to say is that if Pablo Escobar was scared of this woman, then we ourselves should be shitting our pants. But not yet. The Griselda we meet in the pilot episode isn't yet at that point. For context, in the pilot episode, we learn that Griselda and her husband Alberto work for Alberto's brother Fernando, who is cutting them off for losing a second shipment to New York, $500,000 worth. And that shipment is likely drugs because they are smugglers. And Alberto is pimping Griselda out to his brother Fernando to cover the debt, his debt. Whew. Let me not even get into that the way that I want to get into that, because nobody just wants to hear me sitting here insulting people for the next 45 minutes. Back to Griselda, our star. She is somebody who is used to looking out for herself. She is a survivor, as we learned from the first episode, as she covers up the gash in her side, as she gets business done by getting her boys up and organizing a place for them to stay in Miami. And from those initial few minutes where we meet Griselda, there is an element of a desperate housewife running from something vibe that we get from her. We learn that the reason Griselda has the kilo of cocaine in the first place is so that she can sell it in order to get some starter money for her and her family. However, when the opportunity comes to walk away from it all, she starts to think twice. All of a sudden, from the way she's been treated by her husband, by her husband's brother, she has something to prove. She doesn't want to be once again seen as a woman who is easily tossed to one side and left to rot and fend for themselves. She is realizing her worth in the pilot episode, and we want her to succeed because she is in her Beyonce Renaissance era. We know everything that she's been through. We know what she's left behind. We know that she deserves it. She deserves a win, and we are here to see her triumph over all, no matter what she does to get there. I mean, at this point, she hasn't done anything drastic yet, so I don't know, maybe there's a line, but from the pilot episode, let's just say that she breaks a couple of legs, and the person whose legs gets broken deserves it. Now, in terms of the antagonist, I can finally blame the patriarchy, because all men in this episode are trash. And they are all to blame for all the bad things in life that befalls Griselda. First of all, her husband, Alberto, who is the worst. There is a scene in the pilot episode where Alberto has the audacity to be jealous. Sorry? What? I had to pause it and look around because this man was crazy. So Alberto was the first antagonist for me in the pilot episode. The second male antagonist in the pilot episode is somebody called Johnny, who she gets in contact with in order to help her sell the kilo of cocaine. And what does he do? He steals her kilo of cocaine. Rude. Why? Who even steals the kilo of cocaine and tells her to piss off? Sorry? The next male antagonist we have is Rafa Rodriguez, aka Emilica, and he is just a snob. He's a snob who doesn't think that this woman knows what she is talking about. And he's another one who actually tries to steal her cocaine. Like, she offered you the cocaine. Just buy the cocaine. There's no reason for you to just go and steal it from her and be like, that's business. What? I cannot. And those three are the main three antagonists, if you ask me, in the pilot episode. There's no one solid. But I think, if you ask me, when it comes to the series, the main antagonist, who we haven't really met yet, but we get an illusion of, is Fernando, and that is Alberto's brother. Fernando is a big deal in the Colombian drug ring. And let's just say that Griselda has left some shit behind that he's not going to be happy about, and that is why I believe he will end up being one of the true antagonists of the series. But when it comes to the pilot episode, there's just a couple of men who are just doing the absolute most, and that is why I cite the patriarchy and men as the antagonists for the pilot episode. Okay, it's time to take a quick breather and a little interlude as we see what TV and film life is looking like beyond the pilot principle. First order of business, books. I'm currently reading Yellowface by R.F. Kuang and listening to Morning Star by Pierce Brown. I think I'm about Not quite halfway through either book yet, but I'm enjoying it. And I really enjoy listening to a book and reading a book at the same time because ultimate productivity. So happy with that. And here's a tip for anybody who wants to do the same. As long as the two books are not in the same genre, then it's very easy to keep both storylines straight in your mind. So yes, enjoying both of these at the moment, but can't say too much more at this stage. In terms of TV, currently, actually, I've just been binging a few shows that I've recommended on the Pilot Principle, and that is After the Flood on ITV1, where all episodes are available on ITVX, and The Artful Dodger, which is available on Disney Plus in the UK, and I believe came out on Hulu in the US late last year. After the Flood was just so engaging. I just wanted to just keep going and going and going. It's, yeah. If you listen to that pilot analysis that I did, let's just say that some of my predictions, they came true, okay? Your girl knows what she's talking about. And the same can be said for The Artful Dodger, to an extent, okay? But it was a really fun, easy watch, The Artful Dodger, just light, which I kind of liked. And in regards to film, what film to talk about? Oh, I watched The Kitchen, which was recently released on Netflix and is Daniel Kaluuya's directorial debut. And I really enjoyed it. The film dealt with male communication in a really good way. And by that, I mean I was irritated by the lack of communication by the main character throughout the entire movie. It had a weird, subdued energy to it that worked really well. And yeah, I'd recommend it. Go and see The Kitchen on Netflix. Why the F not? Otherwise, in regards to film, I do intend to go and see The Colour Purple, which has recently come out in UK cinemas. I reread the book late last year, so the storyline is quite fresh in my mind, but I haven't seen the musical when the musical was playing on the West End. If you want to know what I thought about The Colour Purple, then make sure you follow at Pilot Principle on Instagram and Twitter/X, where we can chat about the latest in film and TV and books. In terms of my favourite moments from the pilot episode of Griselda, Lady Comes to Town, that's what it's called. My favourite aspect was the opening. I think those 10 minutes were so solid. We just learnt so much about Griselda, the life she was running from and the life she was heading towards. We also learn a lot about what kind of woman she is. She is smart, she is savvy, she is someone who knows what she now wants in life and is going to go and get it. Another thing that I really liked about the pilot episode is that a lot happens in such a short space of time. So much went on. I learned so much about the characters and the world just from those 51 minutes. On the flippity flip side, in terms of what I didn't like, the kids. I didn't like Griselda's kids, okay? The three boys, they just felt like an unnecessary burden, to be perfectly honest with you. And that's not just because I'm not a fan of children, okay? I'm not being biased here. I just don't care about them. And they're just right there, but they didn't do anything. And of course, this is all based on what happens in the pilot episode. And perhaps the kids are all going to feature in massively throughout the rest of the series. But there was a couple of times where some of the boys had like a random back and forth about how to swear in English as opposed to swearing in Spanish. And I was like, okay, ha ha ha. I feel like they could have been a little bit more involved, or just one of them could have been a little bit more involved. I just mean, for example, when Griselda comes in and starts looking at the drugs that she packed in her son's suitcase, one of them could have their eye open and see her and pretend to be asleep. I don't know, just give us a hint that they're going to be a little bit more integral to the plot in the future. Or maybe they're not going to, and then maybe just only have like one kid. Like there's just three of them, and some of them look quite old too. And by old, I mean like 16. I have no idea what kids' heights are supposed to correspond with when it comes to ages. But my point is that they're not innocent, blind little kids who don't understand the world that their mother lives in and why they have the wealth that they have. That nobody even seems to complain that much about why they've moved from Colombia to Florida in the middle of the night. Nobody acknowledges that, and I just think that's a bit odd. So yeah, that is one thing that I didn't really like about the pilot episode, the kids. But before we get into whether or not I will be continuing with the series, let us remind ourselves of the synopsis. So Griselda flees Medellin for Miami to make a fresh start. With her sons and a hidden cachet in tow, she seizes a chance to establish her own business. The writing for Lady Comes to Town was smart and it was sharp. You get told what you need in quick bits of dialogue, and the conversations only dwelled if they were leading up to something big. By the end of the pilot episode, I feel like all of my questions, all those necessary questions, were answered. And that felt like such a rarity, and I was so happy. In terms of the setting, we don't really get much of Medellin or too much of Miami. We just see small pockets of the ecosystem that Griselda is involved in. I will say, though, that it being the 70s is incredibly clear by the cars, the hair, the clothes, the, obvious snorting of cocaine in clubs, all of it was very 70s-esque. And so that works really well for me. But not to an annoying element, because actually the 70s is one of my least favorite eras to watch on screen. I can't say why for the life of me. The pace was great. As I've said, a lot goes down in the 51 minutes of the pilot episode, and I never felt bored watching. In terms of the serial arc, the quote at the beginning tells us the end, and we know that this is the beginning of Griselda's story. We understand already as an audience that the drug business is a dangerous one. We know that people will be fearing for their lives. We know that something has happened with Alberto and that's going to come up. We know that something has happened with Fernando and that's going to come up. We know that that life that Griselda has said that she's running from won't be able to let her go. And so, yes, we have a really clear understanding. Finally, when it comes to an end of episode hook, Amilcar says to Griselda, "You've got one shot, double my order next month and I make you my supplier." So she clearly is not leaving that drug life behind. She is diving in with both hands. And if she wants that chance to have a business of her own and be successful in it, she has to prove herself. So that is our hook to watch episode 2, to see if she will be able to meet Amilcar's demands or not, because she's only got this one bag of coke. That's all she came over with. She didn't hide any others in any other places or in any other suitcases. So already we're like, crap, where's she going to get more cocaine from? She left in the dead of night and told nobody where she was going, and there are people looking for her. How is she going to continue to get a supply of drugs for this Floridian drug guy? I mean, yeah, those are all the questions that we have, because now it's that time to ask the only question that matters on the pilot principle. Will I be continuing with Griselda? Pause for dramatic effect. Yes, of course I'm going to continue with Griselda. What's wrong with you? First of all, the story is not told linearly. During the pilot episode, we flash back in time to the night Griselda left to find out what happened to Alberto, what happened with Fernando, and why she had to leave in a hurry and why she got that gash on her side. So it jumps really nicely from the past to the present, and we get to piece together the story of how she got from Colombia to Florida. Next, Griselda is a hardy main character. We watch her change and grow over the pilot episode quite substantially, and we want to know, and I want to know, how much more she's going to change as the series progresses. And finally, as I've already said, we get a great use of time in the pilot episode. We get context, we get setup, we get story, and we understand the main character's wants and needs. But that is, of course, just me. Now, if you're not a fan of bloody violence, because things do get violent in the pilot episode, and I suspect the violence will be a theme in the series as a whole, then you won't like Griselda. If you prefer the intricate histories of a true story with none of the fluff and over-dramatizations, you prefer expert interviews and eyewitnesses, then you might want to find a documentary on Griselda Blanco. And finally, if you prefer your shows in a single language, then the bilingual nature of Griselda won't be up to your speed. Yes, as per usual, pun intended. In terms of a pilot score, I will be giving Griselda a 4 out of 5. It was nearly a 5, but you can blame those pesky kids who brought absolutely nothing to the table. Aside from them, it was a fantastic pilot. I mean, it's a wonder that more aren't like this. You get all the information in such a succinct, beautiful way. And I guess maybe in this case, too many cooks doth not spoil the broth. The acting was great from Sofia Vergara. She really did a good job with Griselda and those different stages of emotions and situations that she went to. And we really begin to get an understanding of the woman who Pablo Escobar is terrified of. There is also a level of immersion we're getting as the audience. It's like how to start a drug trade, how to become the crime boss of your dreams. We are being informed, we are being entertained, and we are being educated. Though, of course, I personally have no intentions of taking the London drug trade by storm, though I have no doubts I would have made a fantastic queen pin. Now that we've hashed out the fundamental principles, will you be giving the pilot episode a watch? Or have you already binged every episode of Griselda? Follow and chat to me over on Threads, Instagram and Twitter /X @pilotprinciple, and I will catch you on the next episode.
Aww.